From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Jason White. The U.S. hits the pause button on devastating tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says U.S. President Donald Trump has agreed to hold off on tariffs against Canada for at least 30 days after the two leaders spoke this afternoon. Trudeau says Canada has made new commitments in addition to its $1.3 billion plan to strengthen the border. They include appointing a so-called fentanyl czar. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says his province will pause all retaliatory measures against the U.S. That means Ontario's liquor stores won't pull all American liquor from their shelves, but Ford says the retaliation measures remain on the table if Trump imposes the tariffs later. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is going on the offensive, discussing the effects U.S. tariffs would have on both Canadians and Americans. The Liberal leadership hopeful tells CNN it's difficult to figure out what Canada would need to do to avoid the hefty tariffs permanently.
It shifts to energy. This morning, Canadian banking was brought up for the first time, at least in the public domain. So it's very hard to have these discussions when things are moving so rapidly and just not being consistent.
Earlier today, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke from the Oval Office before his second phone meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, where he again floated the idea of making Canada the 51st U.S. state.
We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is taking him at his word. He believes Trump's tariff threat is about making Canada part of the U.S. Singh writes on social media that Canada will not surrender its water, healthcare, or values to Trump. Canada's telecommunications regulator has upheld its decision allowing the country's largest providers, for now, to offer wholesale access to rivals' networks outside their core serving regions. The federal government had asked the commission to reconsider some recently established rules over concerns about the viability of smaller internet service providers acting as alternatives to the big players. Chief Justice Richard Wagner is in Victoria with other justices of the Supreme Court of Canada, starting a cross-country tour. They're marking the court's 150th anniversary. Wagner says the court needs to do more now than in years past to inform the public about the effect of its decisions.
Trust is essential in a democracy. It must be earned and maintained through openness and transparency. I believe justice must not only be done, but also be seen to be done.
He says almost every court decision has an effect on society, including things like abortion, marriage, and medically assisted dying. This is the Canadian Press. In sports, a light night in the NHL with just one game. The Ottawa Senators visit the Nashville Predators, chasing a fifth straight win. A hearing today with the NHL's Department of Safety for Minnesota Wild forward Ryan Harmon. He faces discipline for roughing against Ottawa's Tim Stützle during the Senators' 6-0 win Saturday night. Tavon Campbell is back with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Canadian defensive back re-signed with the CFL club after spending 6 seasons in the NFL. The Canadian Men's Curling Championship will be held in St. John's next year, and hometown favorite Brad Gushue got to make the announcement at a morning news conference.
It's a privilege for me to stand up here today and to announce that the 2026 Montana's Brier is going to be held right here in St. John's.
The 2026 edition of the Montana's Brier will begin 5 days after the Milan Olympics close in Italy. This year's Brier will begin February 28th in Kelowna, BC. From the Canadian Press, I'm Jason White.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.